month been?
Actually, I had to check my math 3 times when I was thinking about when our last board of directors meeting was, since we've gotten about, I don't know, 18 months worth of work done in the last 2 weeks. I was trying to figure out what I had covered in my last director's report and realized we've been very busy. So my director's report will try to cover a whole lot of material as briefly as I possibly can. So first of all, I'd like to start off with some gratitude, particularly to Mayor London Breed, who has made it very clear in her statements to department heads and also in the press that the frontline workers at the SFMTA, particularly our transit operators, our parking control officers, our line supervisors, the people who are out there in the field every day, providing essential service to 100,000 San Franciscans every single day, should be considered in the same light as we do our police officers, our firefighters, and other essential workers. And Mayor London Breed has made sure that our frontline workers have access to the same personal protective equipment, masks and gloves and hand sanitizer and cleanser, also access to hotel rooms and other services that are necessary to acknowledge the tough job that our workforce has. I'm also really grateful to Dr. Grant Colfax and his entire team at the Department of Public Health. They have been instrumental in helping us do the scenario planning that we needed to do to get prepared for any scenario. And in fact, to get prepared for the inevitability of members of our workforce testing positive for COVID and what we needed to do in response to that in terms of the cleaning protocols, contact tracing, all of the hundreds of details that we have a small army of people in place now in order to make sure every single one of those details is taken care of. We, despite all of our efforts, have had 11 staff who have tested positive for COVID-19. We are happy to report that as far as we know, they are all doing well. Thanks to the detailed contact tracing work, including reviewing video files and doing dozens of interviews that our contact tracers have done. We also have 41 staff people in self-isolation as a result of potential exposure. So far, the good news is that of each of the COVID positive cases that we've had at the agency, none of them appears to have been transmitted from one SFMTA employee to another. This is a much better position to be in than the rather dire situation that our counterparts are experiencing in cities from Detroit to New Orleans to New York and others. So we will continue to work hard to follow DPH's guidance to the T in order to do the best that we can to protect our workforce, rooted in the latest available science. We'll also recognize that while on the one hand, we need to follow the science in order to help protect the health of our workers, we also need to recognize that this is a terrifying time. And that we also need to respect the emotional reality of our workforce. And so we have fully engaged our peer counselors, we fully engaged our managers. I've been spending a lot of time out in the field, talking to our workforce about their actual experience and helping to provide emotional support where it's needed because we are, in fact, emotional beings. So there's a lot going on with COVID. It's kind of all COVID all the time, and a lot of information has been needing to go out. So I'm continuing to do a series of 2 to 4 minute videos, updating staff a couple times a week on not only what is happening within the agency, but also celebrating some of the work that our crews are doing above and beyond the call of duty, from the paratransit workers who are helping out in countless ways, to the clerks and middle managers who are working as disaster service workers to do additional car cleaning, to make sure that not only do we clean all of our vehicles every day, but we also clean the vehicles 3 times a day so that each of our operators gets into a clean vehicle at the beginning of their shift. We've also been working on our external messaging. Our comms team has been working full tilt. getting the message out that Muni is only for essential trips. It's for essential workers getting to work, and it's for San Franciscans who need to get access to essential goods and services like food and pharmaceuticals. We are also now getting out the message that thanks to the mayor's most recent health directive, not only is wearing a mask required when out there in the public, but it's also required while riding Muni. Wearing a mask or any other kind of face covering is not about protecting your own health. It's about protecting the health of others around you, including our operators. Face coverings are about keeping your sneeze or your cough or your heavy breathing, whatever it is, to yourself and not spreading the disease, because one of the remarkable characteristics of COVID-19 is the fact that it can be spread while you are still asymptomatic. So wear a face covering in order to protect others. We've also been, of course, having to do a ton of communication around the work that we implemented right before our last meeting, which was stripping Muni down to its bare essential core network, the 17 lines that served the majority of our passengers, that connected to essential services, particularly the hospitals, and that focused Muni service where it was needed most by communities that have the fewest choices. That has involved a huge amount of engagement with the community. We're also now very happy to report that starting on April 25th, this Saturday, we will bring back 4 lines that we had previously cut, or at least portions of 4 of those lines. So that includes the 5 Fulton from downtown out to 8th Avenue, serving St. Mary's Hospital and serving essential services in the Tenderloin and in the Western Addition. It includes the 28 19th Avenue from Daly City BART straight up 19th Avenue to Geary. We had a lot of community engagement on this route because, unbeknownst to us, it actually serves a lot of hospital workers who are coming up from the peninsula, going both to UCSF as well as the hospitals on Geary Street via transfer. So that was great to get that feedback. We're restoring a portion of the 12 Pacific along Pacific Avenue between Battery Street and Van Ness, serving not only Chinese Hospital, but a large concentration of senior citizens living in that corridor that didn't have any east-west transit service. This was also something that we saw both in the data as well as from community engagement. And finally, we're restoring a portion of the 54 Felton, which is our first community service route to be restored. It connects a whole series of neighborhoods from Hunters Point to Bayview to the Portola District, Silver Terrace, the Excelsior, Crocker Amazon to Balboa Park BART Station. And we're also now engaging with the OMI neighborhood about potentially trying to extend it into the OMI as well. So this is some good news, and this good news has come about in part because all of the efforts of DPH and the mayor and a half a dozen city departments at the Emergency Operations Center have helped us to stabilize the availability of our operators, but also our mechanics. And thanks to the disaster service workers, we're able to have sufficient people to keep our cars clean. So that means we're able to deliver more service. Another program that we implemented this week is a new ambassador program. Something that we've been hearing from a lot of our passengers and riders about is that as we're trying to, as the police department and social services have been trying to address crowding on the streets and social distancing within neighborhoods like the Tenderloin, people who had nowhere else to go were seeking refuge on Muni buses, taking up space that was needed by our essential workforce. So we've started an ambassador program to help make sure that Muni is used primarily for essential trips and for essential workers, and that people who need social services can be directed to social services, that people who don't have face masks can either be given them or be given information about where to get them, and also to encourage people to space themselves out at the bus stops, to provide information about what are the essential transit services that are available, and to otherwise provide critical information to our passengers. So far, the results of this have been positive. One of the things that we have learned from is the phenomenal success of our Muni Transit Ambassador program focused on the school trips in the southern neighborhoods. by engaging with people and meeting people as equals rather than as an agent of enforcement. We've been able, through the Transit Ambassador Program, to promote civil behavior by San Francisco middle school kids. So we're hoping that the same approach can work for adults downtown, and we'll provide you with more detail about those results at our next board meeting. Another key program that we implemented this week is the Essential Trip Card program. Again, this is the sort of program that in a normal situation would have taken us 18 months to develop and implement. We did this in a week. And this is to help deal with the fact that so much of San Francisco no longer has transit service within immediate proximity. And there are many seniors and people with disabilities living in hilly neighborhoods or neighborhoods that have suffered from a loss of transit service in this time. So in order to provide an alternative for those folks and to support the people who work in our beleaguered taxi industry, we decided to use some of our limited resources in order to develop a subsidized taxi fare program where people who are over 65 or who have a disability can effectively get a debit card that is valid on any taxi service out there, provided you're going to an essential service destination. As of last night, already about 410 people had signed up for this. Super easy to get by calling 311 or by going to sfmta.com/ETC. In addition to providing real financial benefits to the taxi cab industry, we've also helped the taxi cab industry by providing taxi drivers with personal protective equipment, cleaning equipment, and by using our taxi inspectors to ensure that taxi operators are actually cleaning their vehicles in between runs, providing a comparable level of health as we're offering on our muni buses. So we're hoping that this program will be a great success in many ways. Because we can't stop announcing new programs that would normally take 18 months to develop, but we've been doing it in a week, we also announced this morning through the mayor's office our new Slow Streets program. Many of you perhaps have been following the success of cities around the world. We in San Francisco have been inspired most particularly by the phenomenal work that the city of Oakland has been doing the last couple of weeks on their Slow Streets program, which is designed to serve several functions. For us at SFMTA, one of the most important functions is addressing the parts of the city that have lost the most muni service, that have the least access to essential services and to open space, in order to provide safe corridors for people to walk or bike in order to be able to make their last mile connection to transit or to get to essential services or open spaces. So the proposal, which we hope to start implementing at the end of this week, is to identify the low volume residential streets where we can limit through automobile traffic in order to make those streets feel safer for walking and biking, and in order to allow particularly pedestrians to spread out more so that they can walk or jog while maintaining 6 feet of social distance. The first phase of work was developed mainly around places that had lost muni service, that needed additional access to services, and where there were major gaps in the both transit and bikeway networks. So we're going to be, again, rolling that out this Friday. We'll probably be able to implement about 2 streets per week, and we'll be learning as we go along and collecting input about both how to make adjustments to our initial set of streets, as well as where should we expand to. So we'll look forward to providing you with additional information on that, as well as hearing any input you may have about the program, how it's going, and where we should expand to. I should emphasize as well, unlike the Chronicle story today, which got the message completely wrong, we are not closing any streets to cars. All of the streets will still be open to cars. We're not eliminating any parking spaces. Everyone will still have access to their driveways. All we're doing is limiting through traffic and slowing motor vehicles down so that pedestrians and bikes have priority in the street. The next big news as well, since everything is strangely being accelerated in the time of COVID, is Caltrans is moving forward very rapidly on their US 101 Alemany Replacement Project. So what this involves is taking the entire freeway deck of US 101, basically right at the 280 interchange, right above Alemany Street, and replacing that entire deck. They are shifting that forward to start on April 25th, this weekend, taking out 800 feet of the freeway in both directions, and doing it now because traffic volumes are so light. This is a fantastic opportunity, both for Caltrans and the city, to do a lot of work when it will have the least negative impact on traffic and on communities. It will also allow them to do the work much faster. So you can get a lot of detail on that project by searching Caltrans US 101 Alemany Project. We are coordinating with them closely to make sure, again, that the traffic impacts on surface streets are minimal. A couple of other interesting little details also that we're working on. As some of you know, 2 weeks ago, the Great Highway had to be closed because we faced heavy winds and the sand dunes had blown across the street. Working with the Department of Public Works, after they removed the sand, we agreed, we don't actually really need to reopen Great Highway. That in fact, the path that runs parallel to Great Highway is heavily used both for commuting and for recreational purposes. And it's very narrow. The path is only about 6 feet wide. And so keeping the Great Highway itself closed to car traffic helps us to maintain social distance on this critical recreational commute route. We're watching it closely to make sure that it doesn't become too much of a destination, which is a concern that the Department of Public Health has. So hopefully through some management, we can allow that to be retained as a useful space for exercise and commuting, and not a place for crowded parties, which would require that we reopen the street to cars, which is the last thing that we want to do. We're also working with the Giants, both the ballpark and their Mission Rock development, in order to create some additional space on the 3rd Street Bridge between the ballpark and Terry Francois Boulevard. Right now, the sidewalk is less than 3 feet wide, and there's no traffic in the roadway to the bridge. So we want to take the easternmost lane on a temporary basis to be able to provide a safe space for pedestrians and cyclists to be able to get across the bridge. It also makes it possible to open up Terry Francois Street and Illinois Street as a potential expansion opportunity for our Slow Streets program. And with that, I think I also want to take the time to thank Director Heineke for, well, thank and perhaps curse him maybe for being part of the reason why I ended up taking this job, and why, despite this job having completely changed into something far different than what I thought I was taking, Director Heineke's work has inspired me to realize that I didn't take this job just to be able to do a bunch of cool stuff. I took this job out of a sense of service, and there's really no better time to do public service than right now and right here in San Francisco, the city that I love most in all the world. My job, though, I get paid well for. It's always rather baffled me why all of you serve. Your work on our board of directors is completely unpaid and completely without any thanks. There's no real benefit aside from the benefit that you get understanding that you are making a substantive difference in this small, unmanageable city. And Director Heineke, I think, epitomizes that ideal of dedication to pure public service. Your commitment to this agency for as long as you have served is phenomenal. And you will remain an inspiration to me, a kind of North Star, if you will, for the kind of service that I want to provide this agency in my particular way. So thank you so much. And I will look forward, once it's allowed again, to not only enjoying the ceremony at West Portal Station, in naming the crossover after you, but also enjoying several rounds of drinks at the Philosophers Club around the corner. Thank you so much.
Okay. Mr. Chair, it seems like your microphone is not cooperating right now. And Director Heminger has a question. So maybe Director Borden can manage the meeting while we work on Chair Heineke's microphone.
No problem. So Director Heminger.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, the guy's not even left the building and we turned his mic off. That's really rough.
I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, you're Al Haig, huh? Okay. Jeff, I had a question. I'm afraid it's a parochial one about your slow streets proposal, and that is why no love for the Richmond district?
So the slow streets proposal was developed using several key inputs. The most important of which was where had we cut the most transit service. So in fact, if you overlay the slow streets proposal on our core Muni service map, you'll see a direct correspondence. The biggest gaps in Muni service are where we have emphasized the most investment in at least this round of slow streets investment. We also wanted to make sure that we that in this first step, well, one, that we respected the limitations that we have in material. So we're working on sourcing additional materials. So we wanted to make sure that we did enough investment that people could truly spread out. We're actually worried about doing too little investment, attracting too much attention, and therefore crowding. So the Sunset District, which had faced the deepest Muni service cuts, is actually getting the biggest investment in slow streets. It's also one of the easier neighborhoods to actually make a significant difference and create a real network. We also, like Holloway Street was a key consideration for us as well, given the big gap in the OMI, even after we brought some service back. So the Richmond District, by comparison, has much better access to retail services and to open space than almost any neighborhood in San Francisco. It's also been a place that has suffered some of the least Muni service cuts. The same is true for districts 2 and 3 and South of Market, where most Muni service remains and where there's easier access to essential services nearby. So I'm hoping that if we can make phase 1 successful, that we can start expanding this citywide, but we'll want to do that with input from all of you, as well as members of the Board of Supervisors and many community-based organizations, something that we did not have the luxury of doing in order to respond to the critical need to restore some mobility a week and a half after we've done such dire service cuts.
Very good. So sorry for my mic failing there. I wanted to give Gwyneth just a true taste of what it's like in the heat of the battle there to get her ready. But I see there are several virtual mics lifted, and per our usual course, what I might do is see if we have public comment on Director Tumlin's report, and then get back to directors to ask further questions or provide comments. So Ms. Boomer, can you see if there's public comment on item number 7, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. For members of the public who are watching this meeting who wish to address the board on this topic, please call 888-808-6929, and then the code is 9961164. For those of you who are on the phone already who wish to address the board under general public comment, which are items only raised and discussed by Director Tumlin, please press 10. And moderator, please let us know when, if there are people on the line.
Your conference is now in question and answer mode. To summon each question, press 1, then 0. You have 3 questions remaining.
Wonderful.
All right. So when it is your turn to speak, the system will prompt you automatically. Moderator, please take the next caller. We will set a 2-minute time limit, and I will give each caller a 2 minutes and then a 30-second warning. First caller, please. Hello?
Caller with a phone number ending in 7186. It's your turn to speak.
All right. Well, as the
Okay,
longest serving board member, I can say that might have been the most eloquent public comment we've had in a while. Let's move to the next speaker.
All right. So, speaker, we've had no response. If you want to rejoin, please dial 10 to rejoin the queue.
You have 3 questions remaining.
Okay, next speaker, please.
Hi there. Hello. Thanks to the Secretary and the Department of Technology for making this possible. Somehow I'm more nervous doing this than I would be if I were standing in front of you.
Could you give us
my
your
name?
name?
Is Jed Holtzman. Yes, my name is Jed Holtzman. I moved here in 1999. I work on climate policy. I want to thank the director for the huge list of great work, and we're really glad to have you in the city. I think maybe there's some learning there when all of this settles down on the need for 18-month germination times when such amazing work can get done at a breakneck pace. I was originally planning the last week plus to comment on the desperate need to open streets, whether because of joggers, couples, families, kids, dogs. As someone with outstanding health problems, I have really found any time I've gone outside to be really stressful and kind of just dodging selfish humans all the time. It doesn't make me feel great about living in San Francisco. Now that this plan has been announced, it's fantastic. It actually includes my street, and that's great. I really am also concerned about crowding as well. That's obviously the whole reason for us to need to open the street in the first place. So I would hope that there would be some light enforcement where possible, rather than just leaving everything to be a total free-for-all and then shut it down if people are irresponsible. My last comment is just on the pace.
30 seconds.
Current stay-at-home orders only till May 3rd. I understand that's likely to be extended, but even if it's extended to mid-June, it seems like 2 streets a week, the program wouldn't really get ramped up to full until almost this is hopefully, fingers crossed, getting to be over. And so since it's been well over a month for folks and the need is really built up, I would really encourage quicker action to slow these streets and allow for more personal space. And really thank you for all the work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holtzman. Thank you for commenting today. Ms. Boomer, would you please call the next speaker or enable the next speaker?
You have 5 questions remaining.
And this is for topics discussed by Director Tumlin. Next speaker, please. Give us your name and we'll start your 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Cliff Barger. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to call in to make comment. This is the first time I've been able to give comment at the MTA board because of the time and place of the meetings. I want to thank the Director Tumlin for his great presentation. Also, thank you, Chair Heineke, for your long service to the board, and thank you to the rest of the board members for your service. I want to applaud MTA for pursuing this Slow Streets initiative. It was really exciting to see our friends across the bay making this big step in Oakland, and I'm glad that we're learning from their experiences. As a resident of Potrero Hill, I'm really glad to hear Director Tumlin mention the 3rd Street Bridge in particular and the possibility of extending slow streets to Terry Francois in Illinois. Opening up more of the waterfront is really important and is one of the more crowded places that I've seen since the lockdown has gone in place. So thank you very much. And I also echo the previous caller on please implement this faster if possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Boomer, can you call the next speaker, please?
You have 5 questions remaining.
Hello, my name is Paul Barrera. That was a mistake, and I dialed the numbers by mistake. So excuse me for that. I'm still adjusting to this.
All right, next speaker, please.
You have 4 questions remaining.
Hello.
Hi, this is Hayden Miller.
Hi, Hayden.
Hello.
Go ahead.
I'm just calling.
Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm just wanting to say that I urge you guys at Muni to look at reducing the capacity limits on your buses. Right now, for a 40-foot bus, you guys are allowing 20 people on it, which really doesn't allow for adequate 6 feet distancing. Other transit agencies, AC Transit has limited it to 10 people, and Golden Gate Transit has limited it to 8 people, which I think will allow for better social distancing. So I encourage you guys to look into that. And thank you for your service, Mr. Heineke. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Miller, very much for saying that. Appreciate it. Next speaker, please.
You have 3 questions remaining.
Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Yes. Good afternoon, Chair Heineke and members. Alita Dupree here for the record again. Let the record reflect my pronouns are she and her. Thank you. So concerning the director's report, I'm appreciative of you bringing back the 28 line, which will help close the big gap in the outer Sunset section of San Francisco, which is an area that I spent many, many nights in, and probably my favorite area of San Francisco. This will help lots of people to be able to get around in that very hilly area with long distances. Concerning COVID-19, obviously it's a matter I take very seriously. We can have limits, we can have mask requirements. It's important to ensure that they can be easily complied with. What we don't want is to have people who are left on the side of the road. There was an incident in Philadelphia in which a passenger didn't have a mask, and it turned into a very ugly incident. We don't want to have a situation where bus drivers are trying to play good cop, bad cop, and having things escalate, and worse yet, having people get hurt. So it would be easy if masks were easily had, but they're not. So I think it's important for Muni to be very involved in the process of helping people to get these protective face coverings so people can comply and not be left out in the cold. So I appreciate the work you do. And Chair Heineke, I'm going to miss you. You have been an inspiration to me to come and speak at these meetings and get involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
You have 2 questions remaining.
Next speaker, please give us your name, and we will start your time when you start speaking.
Hello, yeah, my name is John McCormick, and I am a San Francisco resident Tenderloin activist. And I'm calling in regards to the Safer Streets program that was just established, and specifically want to comment that the Tenderloin only has one block that has been blocked off. And in terms of equity, and in terms of just like common sense, I don't at all think that this makes sense at all. Tenderloin has the highest density of seniors, children, and people with disabilities in the entire city. Yet one block has been reserved for slower streets. If we're trying to be equitable about this situation, we need a whole route through the Tenderloin. The Sunset District, much less dense, has miles of blocks and blocks and blocks of streets outlined to be slower streets. We're talking about helping the most vulnerable and if we're talking about the most vulnerable populations and helping the most vulnerable populations, then we need to be putting more attention on the Tenderloin and looking at the Tenderloin to see where we can block off more streets so that the groups, the people that live there, are treated fairly and equitably, and I just don't see that being reflected basically in any of SFMTA's initiatives and directives, especially this directive that has only blocked one block in the Tenderloin. I hope that you consider this comment and look to in the near future, in the near days, to block off more streets. It's just not fair. It's not safe to the vulnerable populations that live there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those helpful comments. Ms. Boomer, is there anyone left in the speaking queue?
You have one question remaining.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Please state.
Curtis Bradford from. Hi, this is Curtis Bradford, a community organizer and co-chair of the Tenderloin People's Congress. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm concerned also. The last speaker spoke about the slow streets in the Tenderloin. We have a crisis happening in the Tenderloin right now, and I know that folks, unless you've been down here to see it yourself, you're probably not really aware of the full scale of it. I live in the Tenderloin. I live in SRO here. I am unable to even access my corner store, let alone try to get to the larger store or any of the other needed services. I've had to do without my prescription from the pharmacy because it's just not safe for me to travel outside. I'm a very at-risk person, and I have to be careful. And there's no way for me to safely travel in the Tenderloin at this point. The streets are overcrowded. There's no safe passage. And so we really need some blocked-off lanes. We actually do need some lanes reduced. We need some parking lanes taken away. We need extra space so that folks can travel and move and access services in a safe way. And I heard you say that there are limited resources in order to do these slow streets, and I'm thinking, well, if that's the truth, then perhaps you could do less in other neighborhoods because the need is greater in the Tenderloin than in any other neighborhood in the city. We have a crisis happening here, and there is a real problem that's getting ready to happen in this neighborhood because folks are not able to practice social distancing, and you're going to end up with a health disaster on your hands coming out of the Tenderloin, and that puts the whole city at risk, not just our neighborhood. So please, we need some help here. We need help now, not next week, not 2 weeks. We need help now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
You have 0 questions remaining.
So if there's anyone else who wishes to address the board who is currently on the line, please dial 10.
And this is on the director's report only.
Moderator, please let us know if anyone else joins.
This is moderator. There are no current participants wishing to make comments.
Okay, we'll close public comment on item 7. And as soon as the tech takes care of that, Director Rupke, you'll be up.
Moderator confirms that public comment is disabled.
Director Rupke, please.
Thank you. I guess I want to talk about slow streets and the Essential Trips program, card program. So I really appreciate Director Tumlin's explanation for the way slow streets were the first step of slow streets was rolled out, in that it's meant to supplement muni service that was taken away. At the same time, like hearing the comments from the Tenderloin and just knowing that we need more safe space in the Tenderloin in general, I would love to see staff come back with some ideas about how we can make that space available in the Tenderloin in particular. And I know that staff is working so hard and I really appreciate it, but that is my one request on that. And then on the Essential Trips, the Essential Trip Card program for people with disabilities and seniors, I think it's a fantastic way to meet the needs of transit-dependent people and help out our taxi industry. And I think it would be really helpful to get feedback from the taxi drivers about their experience in this and see if there's a way that we can use this model in other ways post-COVID. So those are my comments and questions, I guess. Thanks.
Excellent, excellent.
Thanks, Director. Chairman, if I may, I do want to point out that the Tenderloin is high on our priority list as well. We are wanting to partner with community-based organizations within the Tenderloin. We've got a strong relationship with them, particularly in the work that we've done on the 300 block of Ellis, and that we're working with them on the 100 block of O'Farrell. We recognize that that in the Tenderloin, getting slow streets right is more than just a matter of putting out a few sandwich boards. So we really want to make sure that there is a management plan for ensuring the success of slow streets, because as previous speakers have said, not only is it the greatest concentration of vulnerable populations in the city, it is also the greatest concentration of severe injuries and fatalities as a result of traffic violence. So we want to use this as an opportunity to address that both in the short and the long run, but do it in a way that is that involves more community involvement than we had time to do in a week. So we'll look forward to coming back to you with a more sophisticated approach for the Tenderloin.
Right, and I would also note that it's also one of the greatest concentrations of children in the city too, which is why I've personally asked that you all look at Leavenworth or some other street as maybe one of the next car-free streets. And Director Tumlin has always been receptive and understands that, and I appreciate it. Director Eakin, please.
Thank you, Chair Heineke. First of all, Director Tumlin, I just wanted to thank you for your heroic commitment to public service during this time. I know that's more than you bargained for to navigate your way through this challenge when you took the position. So just wanted to also say, please let us know how we as a board can support you and the staff during these difficult times. As to your update, it was, of course, exciting to see the mayor's announcement this morning, taking important steps to make more safe space for walking and biking in the city, and also to do so in a way that's very low cost. And I'm very glad we're going to be monitoring and learning as we go, and hopefully we can engage in some rapid iteration addressing some of the comments we're hearing today. I just wanted to share a few comments as I look at the map. It seems there are definitely some parts of the city that have a great deal of pedestrian traffic and narrow streets that scream out to me as in need of more safe pedestrian space. And Chinatown is one that comes to mind really clearly without any slow streets proposed on this map. And I also heard your explanation very clearly about the nexus to transit. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'll also just note that it seems like there are parts of the city that have relatively less parks access than some of the parts of the city receiving the slow streets treatment. And I just see some of the eastern neighborhoods and southeastern neighborhoods as standing out with relatively less treatment and need for safe space for recreating as well. And then finally, just a suggestion, because I've heard the theme of sort of enforcement and how can we ensure that people are adhering to social distancing guidelines while using these facilities. Just listening to you talk about the success of the ambassador program on transit and how treating people as equals as opposed to agents of enforcement has been so effective. I wonder if we could sort of take a page out of that playbook and think about whether the ambassador program and sort of that style of enforcement could be a successful model as we think about the slow streets network and how we encourage people to adhere to social distancing guidelines. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's exactly what we've been doing. So our parking control officers have been partnering with SFPD and the Recreation and Parks Department to help them with social distancing support in Golden Gate Park, on Ocean Beach, and in the Marina Green. So we'll also want to learn from that success, doing supporting compliance in a pro-social rather than top-down enforcement kind of way.
Wonderful. Director Heminger, you had one more comment or question for Director
Tumlin?
I
did, and thanks for allowing me to double dip, Mr. Chairman.
But it's the last time I'm going to allow it for.
Yeah, you can. That joke will get old by the end of this meeting. Jeff, and maybe just a little bit of a personal story. The only place that I have myself experienced excessive crowding is in Golden Gate Park on the sidewalks there. And I know there was some public discussion a while back about whether or not we could close some of those roads like we do on the weekends. And the concern that I heard reflected from the Department of Public Health was they were worried it would draw too many additional crowds. And I guess the response I would make to that is I think the crowds are there. And I wonder whether that's worth another discussion with the Department of Public Health so that we could avoid the crowding there. It's an obvious magnet for people. That's what they want to do with their dogs and their kids and everything else. But right now, it's a bit of a madhouse on the paths. And we've got a lot of bike lanes in the park as well, so you don't want them crowding onto the bike lanes either. So I just wondered what your thoughts might be on that subject.
Yes, we're engaged regularly with the Department of Public Health and the Recreation and Parks Department about the streets in Golden Gate Park. As most of you know, the streets in Golden Gate Park uniquely are not controlled by SFMTA. They are managed by the Recreation and Parks Department. And during the COVID crisis, we are all city departments are basically respecting the city's emergency operations center. So throughout this crisis, all of the work that we're doing has been coordinated through the city's EOC. And we are so grateful for the very strong and direct leadership from the Department of Public Health here in San Francisco. You know, having learned from their experience in the last pandemic in San Francisco and gotten ahead of the curve here for the Bay Area, we respect their conclusions on Golden Gate Park. However, we know that we're starting to have the conversation about how shelter in place starts getting ratcheted down. And at a certain point, we should be able to demonstrate through experimenting on kind of non-Instagrammable streets like Kirkham, how to manage streets to accommodate social activity, but maintaining social distance. So we'll get some experience with management techniques that work. In addition, at a certain point, the utility of a safe bike commuter corridor exercise place like JFK, the utility will outweigh the potential risk of it becoming a regional attractor. Those lines will cross as San Franciscans get used to wearing personal protective equipment every day, get used to like having just socialized social distance and having it be self-enforcing, unlike the situation we had last weekend where SFPD had to actually do some pretty hardcore enforcement in Dolores Park and in Golden Gate Park. So we believe that at a certain point, San Franciscans will just get used to this, and that we will be able to take a second look in collaboration with Rec Park and the Department of Public Health about what should we do with Golden Gate Park and JFK Drive in particular. But in the meantime, I 100% support the conclusion of the Department of Public Health, and I stand behind them.
Wonderful. I don't see any other virtual mics up from directors. So if none, I will say a few things. Jeff, first of all, the taxi program sounds fantastic. Thank you for your attention to the safety of our taxi drivers, as well as giving them a economic boost when they need it. I'm thrilled with the Slow Streets program. It's not lost on me that it's my last day. I do think that might have been a little bit of coincidence, but it still makes me very happy, and I hope it gives us more information, and that I know my remaining board members will be pushing for us to look at other car-free streets and similar benefits that we can provide to San Franciscans, and I'm very pleased about that. One thing that I would ask Jeff, and I don't think it's appropriate for today, and I know you guys are thinking about this, but I do think it appropriate either for a board member briefing or the next meeting would be starting to lay out your plans for how we're going to dial service back up, how we're going to come back online, how we're going to turn the dimmer switch in the other direction, to use the analogy everybody's using, and bring Muni back, because I think our customers and our employees need to start thinking about how that's going to play out, so they can visualize it, so they can follow your directives, and so they can feel the optimism that is going to come back. This agency is going to respond, the city is going to respond, and we're going to be okay. And I think starting to plan for that, which I know you're doing, and communicating those plans will help people understand what the situation is going to be like, and I think will make folks really optimistic. I suspect I'm not the only one who misses dearly riding on the subway. And then a question that I had for you that I've asked you, but I wanted to share. I very much support the idea of getting the work on 101 done now. When we were presented with what it would be like in July, the idea was, well, July 4th might be a time when there'll be the least traffic. Well, we now have the time where there's least traffic, so I'm glad they're proceeding that way. And I had asked you, and I thought the board members might like to hear the answer to this. can we utilize this time when the subway is out of operation to get ahead of some of the track work and other things that we have, keeping in mind the safety of our employees? I found your answer very thoughtful, and I would ask that you share it with the other board members, please.
Yes, so these are all questions that we are spending a lot of time thinking about. There's this unique period of time as shelter in place starts getting ratcheted down, but before the economy and congestion come rip-roaring back. It's an opportunity for us to get a lot of work done and deal with the residual fear that many people will have about getting onto a crowded train or walking on a busy sidewalk. These are fears that transit shares with the restaurant industry. In order for San Francisco to come back and to be San Francisco again, we need to be able to celebrate conviviality and closeness. So in terms of how the system comes back, we're also working with the Department of Public Health about exactly what happens as shelter in place starts getting ratcheted down. So we have been asked to not begin any new construction projects except for things that are absolutely essential. So we've been hoping to get some major deferred maintenance projects underway, but we realized that the nature of that work made it almost impossible to keep people 6 feet apart. We need to have groups of people repairing the subway. So what is the amount of personal protective equipment that is necessary at what point in time in order to allow this work to get started? These are questions that we're asking Department of Public Health, and we're getting ready to get started on. I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to keep the subway closed a bit longer than is strictly necessary in order to address decades of deferred maintenance and really get it right. Moreover, it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to rethink our service. So much of the Muni map remains fairly unchanged since 1912, when there were multiple private streetcar operators competing against each other for parallel franchises. Do we want to bring back that same exact map? How can we best make trade-offs between much better frequency on a fewer number of routes versus poorer frequency on many routes? Should we even bring back schedules? So we have switched in a moment of crisis from having everything operate on a schedule to having most of our lines operate according to headway management. We're getting much more reliable service as a result, despite the erraticness of operator availability. Should we ever bring schedules back? We changed this week the way we use NextBus to predict the first few stops on every run in order to eliminate ghost buses. Should we continue that? Should we bring the rail system back the way that it was? Like, should the J ever go back into the subway? Or can we use the new Malcolm Heineke Memorial crossover as an opportunity to dramatically improve capacity and frequency in the core subway and actually have lines that connect to it? Here in San Francisco, unique among cities, the idea of a single seat ride to the financial district is sacred. The job growth in San Francisco is not in the financial district. The job growth is scattered everywhere. In the new San Francisco that we're becoming, we're going to need to get used to the idea of the transfer. So how should we make that work? Should we make it work by much better frequency in our core line? Should we be looking at timed meets like other cities do? Again, we will never again have this opportunity to rethink the mobility system of San Francisco from the ground up and be thoughtful about how and why we turn lines and services back on.
Well, thank you for that fantastic answer, and I hope board members found it as inspiring as I did. I just wanted you all to hear that. This is a unique opportunity, not just on maintenance of the subway, but on sort of the planning discussions that Director Tumlin has talked about. And I think as we are ambassadors for this agency, and some folks are really going to be pushing on us to turn the subway service back on as soon as we can, we need to be mindful of this opportunity and communicate to our fellow citizens that there may be a little bit of a delay so that we can make the system so much better as we go forward. And I just think this really is a unique opportunity, and I'm thrilled that Jeff is doing what he's doing to seize that opportunity. And with that, I will thank you, Jeff, for your kind words about me personally. I feel very strongly about this agency, but leaving it in your hands and Gwyneth's hands is a real comfort to me, because I know both of you are tremendous leaders who also care very deeply about these items. So with that, that is the conclusion of item 7. Ms. Boomer, if we could move on to item 8. I think we may not be getting a report, but you tell me,
Yes.
please.